Hello from Austria.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from everyone. Live from Zurich, and thank you for staying with us and joining us again for this interesting session on having Dr. Robert Pucher with me. Dr. Robert Pucher is the head of software engineering program at the University of Applied Science at Wien. He's also the president of the UXPA-Austria. His experience is definitely the scientific board for the UXQCC, User Experience Quality Certification Center. So after receiving his doctorate in technical sciences, Dr. Robert Pucher mainly developed software in the field of medicine. He's the founding member of the ACE GmbH in Vienna, a medium-sized software development. His special expertise lies in the field of user experience, design, interaction with. Welcome, Dr. Pucher. It's a pleasure having you here. And we'll be talking about usability testing. From my experience as well, it's a field that is not well deemed important right now. So I'll leave the floor to you for you to enlighten us.
Thank you, Lavlash. Hello to everybody from Vienna. Let's directly jump into the subject. So, as you know, many companies really focus on usability and user experience. Some of them do better, some of them do not so good. And when it comes to usability, of course, you have a ISO standard. And the standard says it's the extent to which a system, product, or service can be used by specified users to achieve specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. So what does that mean? You have to specify the system. You have to specify the user. You have to specify the goal. You have to know what effectiveness and efficiency is, what satisfaction is, of course, you also have to know, and you have to define the specified context of use. So the definition by itself doesn't help you a lot. So let's go on. There are, of course, many interpretations of what is efficient, what is effective. Let's just go on. There are better definitions of usability and user experience, but I also want to skip that. I want to jump with you into a usability test. So this is the first usability test. This is what the engineers have designed. But this is what the users are going to do. This corner is just behind our university. I frequently pass by, and as you see, nobody uses the designed way. They just invented a shortcut. So this is what people think others have to do or should do with the software, whatever, and in reality they do that. So you have been an observer now, but now let's go on. Imagine a relatively old electric stove. This is a real story. It happened to me a couple of years ago. And this is the display of that stove. And the usability test is set the time to 10:50 a.m. What do you press? Of course you have ideas. It's not a real usability test because you can't try out what you want to do. But in a way, it is a real usability test because you have probably no clue how to set it. I used these examples for many times in conferences and talks, and I only got one valid solution, which I passed back to the lady who owns the stove. Switch off the electricity at midnight, switch it on again, and it starts with 0000, which worked. So now she knows how to set the correct time, but which is not a real solution in the end. So to give you a better this was your first usability test, but to give you a better understanding of a usability test, I show you an example of a real usability test. This is a video which I'm going to share with you, and we focus on the first part, I think. So let's start. Okay, I see there are technical issues. The sound isn't played, so I go through the video and I will explain what's happening. So what Gerhard basically does is he tries to open the website and he finds that. So he isn't able to switch from German to English first. He has to accept cookies because he can't speak German. He just guesses that he has to do something. The next thing is he faces that website and he has to switch from German to English. But it's difficult to find because the website is written in German, and this is not a mental model people understand to switch from one language to the other. If you have a flag here like German and English or United States, it's easy to understand. Okay, let's go on. The next thing is he switches finally from German to English, and now he gets the English version. And what he gets now is name. He doesn't know the name of a doctor. Area of expertise, he tries to choose the area of expertise and he gets that. This is only HIM. And what does infectious diseases and tropical medicine actually mean? So it's not very helpful to him. So he scrolls through that and he scrolls through that. And he finally thinks that for skin lesions, dermatology should be a suitable area of expertise. Then he enters a zip code because he needs to choose a location, and he doesn't get an answer. And he goes on and he tries and he tries and he tries and he tries and he tries, and he finally finds a doctor which has accessibility wheelchair, speaks English, and it's the only doctor which finally was suggested by the system. And when we go on and we go on, I can't show you. He says, okay, that's what does that mean? Well, appointments, you probably guessed this means telephone in English and so on. What does it mean, no insurances? This means she doesn't accept insurances as payment. So you need to pay in cash or with credit card. And it goes on and on and on and on. And finally, he tries name, area of expertise, skin disease as name. And then he finally finds out that name means the name of the doctor. So the thing is, this is the official website of the Board of Doctors in Vienna to find a suitable doctor, which is a very poor user experience. Unfortunately, I can't show you the whole thing. So I go on to the next user experience thing. This is to buy a ticket from Innsbruck, from Vienna to Innsbruck. This is what he should do. And he ends up, which is quite interesting, he finds that train, but he's not able to buy a ticket for that train. It never states that here you can buy a ticket and here you can buy a ticket, but this website doesn't support the Westbahn company. It just displays the train, but you never can buy a ticket for the train. So he tries and tries, and he finally gets the website to buy tickets, and he ends up finding different trains, not the trains which were displayed in the other screen, which is confusing. So the end of the story is Gerhard rates the website for buying a ticket in a scale from 1 to 10 with 6, and the website for finding a doctor with 4, which is not really a good rating. And the question now is, did those people ever do a usability test? These people, I know they did usability tests, but to my knowledge, they did it in a wrong way. And these people here, they never did a usability test. They just asked someone to build the website. So that is basically the usability test I wanted to show you. This was a so-called moderated usability test. Moderated usability test means that the usability test is guided by a person. In that case, it was me, which is very often helpful. Unmoderated tests, which are also done, the user just gets a sheet of paper or a computer screen, and they're stated what she or he has to do and go through the test. I'm not a fan of unmoderated tests. They are relatively cheap. You can use them in several settings, but usually moderated usability tests are a lot better. This is just for explaining what you can do. However, if you have a small budget, there are many companies which offer unmoderated tests. You can just do them via the internet. Anyway, I want to go to a very important thing. And this is the basis for understanding what a usability test does and what a usability test does not, and why you need a usability test. I go to the last line. The mental models are our reality. And the mental model is a cognitive framework that you create to simplify your understanding of the world. So in the mental model, you underlay everything with meaning. If you see a dog, you get the feeling of, oh, what a nice dog, or oh, it's dangerous. If you see a person in the streets of Baghdad, you are probably more cautious than in the streets of Vienna, and. Mental models can be about anything, from how a car works to how people behave in social situations. And in our context, mental models are what people understand when they see on the screen. I skipped that. This video shows you what a mental model really does. If you want to look it up in the internet, it's easy. Who done it? Just put that phrase into Google or whatever, and you will directly guide you to that video. So in the end, the thing is, what we need to find out in our lives is the meaning of objects around us. And our senses and our everything, our brain and everything we have are perfectly designed to understand, for example, what an elephant is, what an elephant means. We had a very unlucky experience in Salzburg these days. A rhino killed one of the people working in the zoo. And of course, this person knew how dangerous a rhino is, but it somehow happened. But imagine a blind person is not able to see the elephant. So the blind person just extrapolates, so just guesses from the limited information this person gets what the elephant is. And so this person says, that's a snake. This says it's like a trunk. I don't want to be in the shoes of this person here. What really is the problem? The same thing is done when we look onto a computer screen. So this is what we look at. Okay? And we extrapolate it to such an image. And we don't see that. But let's dig something deeper into that subject. The British Midland Flight 092 didn't reach the runway on January 8th, 1989. It's long ago. And the reason was the following. The two pilots who survived the accident, they had a mental model of a Boeing 737-300 in their mind and had been flying a brand new Boeing 737-400 at that time, brand new. And this airplane, I had to redraw the instruments because I didn't get permission to show the original instruments. This is a vibration monitor. And they changed the monitor from a standard display to that display. So the pilots looked onto the monitor and should have found out that the right engine is 40. But they thought it's the left engine. This was because the air which came into the cockpit was sucked from both engines, and in prior models, it was only sucked from the left engine. And because they did smell smoke, they thought it must come from the left engine. And even if they looked onto the display, the two informations became merged, and the mental model was stronger. So they switched off the functioning engine. And with the more functioning engine, they didn't make it to the runway. Nothing of that can happen now. This was completely redone, of course. And there are many, many accidents and incidents in air traffic which come from these facts. So it's well known. The mental model always is stronger than what you see. We only see a very limited part of our screen, for example. If you stretch out your arm and look on your thumb, the area of the nail is the area you see in full resolution. So basically, if you look on a screen like this, what you see in full resolution is that. And you have to extrapolate what is here, which gives people a lot of problems and which is unknown by most people who design software. So in the end, reality only exists inside the human brain, and everything one perceives or thinks only exists inside an unrealistic, simplified model of the world. You don't believe me? The reason for all this is that our brain simply does not have the computational computing resources to process everything. So we have fancy strategies to reduce the data which we have to process. I don't want to go too deep into that because I'd run out of time in that. The problem is everybody, you, me, other people have a different model of the world. The model is not the same. And those models collide, especially in software engineering. So let's say Anna is a customer who explains Bert what she needs from the new software. And Anna might be a neurosurgeon. And Anna really knows what she wants from the software, but her knowledge extends beyond the knowledge of Bert. But Bert's knowledge extends beyond the knowledge of Anna, or let's call it the sum of the mental models you have in your brain. So from Anna's position, it looks like when Bert talks, because she has to interpret everything with her own mental models, she thinks basically that she knows what Bert wants to tell her, and she knows more. From Bert's perspective, it's absolutely the same. He has the feeling he understands what Anna is telling him, and Bert believes he understands what Anna is telling him. So what happens in the end is really talking with understanding of the meaning you only can about this shared area, but you can't talk about that and you can't talk about that. And if Anna wants something which lies here, Bert only understands what he can understand. So he misinterprets what Anna understands. And he feels yes and no, but it is wrong. He doesn't know what it means. Let's show you some examples. You probably know this. This is the start button of Windows. Okay. Microsoft brainwashed the whole earth that the start button should shut down the computer. So if you want to shut down the computer, you have to press the start button. And nobody actually used, when they dismissed the start button, nobody knew how to shut down the computer, and they had to reintroduce the Windows button. And everybody knows when he goes to the Windows button, she or he can shut down the computer. But let's go something different. May I ask you, when you see this image and you press here, is it going to display 18 if you press here? Or is it going to display 16? 18 or 16? There's quite a lot of statistics about that. 70% of people in Western Europe believe it's 18. 30% believe it's 16. It's because you can have two different mental models. It can be a slide which is moved upwards, then it's 16 which is moved upwards, or it could be a number which has to count up or has to count down. So these two mental models are not specified when you look on this. What about that? If you press that button, is it going to display April or is it going to display June? And here the proportion is different. It's about 50-50 in the population of Western Europe. So you see, in different contexts, in a different context, you might have a different representation of the world. This is what I wanted to show, reintroduced. Another question. Is this user interface complicated? Probably you say yes. But if you ask air traffic controller, it says, no, it's not complicated, it's easy. It just condenses and it shows me everything I need to know immediately. So the question, is it comprehensible or not, depends on the person and depends on the mental models this person uses to interpret the data. So let's go to a next question. If you want to make it warmer, what do you have to do? This is a control in a car. You want to make it warmer. What do you have to do? Usually, after some thinking, people find answers. Actually, it's a cab in Singapore, and it's always too hot in Singapore. It's never too cold. So the only thing you can do is cool down. So you have to switch off the ventilator, or you put that knob to 0. This makes it warmer. If you turn it to the right, it makes it cooler, because the degree of coolness of the temperature is going to be lowered if you increase the number, which is somewhat contra-intuitive to our displays in the cars. What is this? Maybe you see, maybe you don't see. This is what a person who jumps out of a plane wants to see after opening the parachute. So something more about mental models. So this is the Windows button on the keyboard, and I have a laptop which has a Linux button. What is the difference? It's no difference. I installed Windows on that laptop, and of course I pressed the Linux button to get the Windows menu. You understand what I mean? If there's a mental model, we assume that similar things behave similar. But first we have to know what is behind such an icon. And that's why on the first slides, nobody finds out how to set the time in that electric stove, because the mental model behind is different. And you probably know what I want to say, want to tell you, and that is, whatever you do, it's always your mental models which are put into the software. And to find out if your mental models match the mental models of the user, you have to do a usability test. And this is the reason why it doesn't work without the usability test, with one exception. If the user and the programmer or the software development team are very similar, so let's say they develop software for each other, then it works. Then the usability is fine. Well, there are some other things you have to keep in mind. I don't want to go too deep into that, but when a screen is displayed, the user always tries to make the most simple geometric forms out of the screen. So when you look here, you obviously see direct access to web check-in, to flight status, to my bookings, to book a hotel, to book a rental car, which is wrong. This belongs to book. Direct access is a different thing. If you click direct access, you get something entirely different. But we believe there's something like this laying behind that. So, well, it isn't a great deal here, but in the end, it's a misunderstanding because of our way how we interpret things. Another thing is color blindness. This is the entry to the garage of our university. It switches from red to green. Green means no car is approaching. Red means stop, a car is approaching. Why did they do that? Obviously, they lacked the space to do something like this, which would be clear. Red, yellow, green. Green, yellow, red. And we have about 5% of people who can't distinguish between red and green. But people who can distinguish between red and green, they can't imagine what's happening. So what you can do is you can use a color blindness simulator, for example, to find out what people with impaired vision, with impaired color vision really see. So this would be a good idea. This is normal. This is somebody with red weakness would see. You see the red disappears. And this is somebody with blue weakness would see. It still looks quite okay, but there's something wrong here. This is different, and this is different from here. So people see it in a different way. How to measure UX? How to measure UX? To measure UX is very complicated. As I told you, when you have a usability test, when we had our simple usability test, the final question was, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate the usability of the site, or the usability of the site regarding your task in the given situation? And you get a 4 to, we got a 4 and we got a 6, which is okay, but usually we want to know more. So we should use a framework to develop a metric to find out about the thing we want to measure. Okay, let's say the user is super happy if she or he uses the application, but there are no new users who use the app. And what the intention was to attract new users. So it's quite difficult. So there's a hard framework. Just type hard framework into any browser and you find many explanations of that. There are goals. For the goals, you get a signal. And from the signal, you deduct this a metric. And of course, you can't compare different matrices, but you can compare your progress. If you do a usability test and you do something. Well, of course, there are baseline metrics, unique visitors, page views, session lengths, traffic, and. I'm not happy of baseline metrics. I'm no fan of baseline matrices. There's not much you can do with them. There are usability questionnaires, which are predefined to give you somewhat a standardized feedback what people think about your website. So instead of asking in a scale from 1 to 10, I could have asked Gerhard to fill out this usability questionnaire. It's 16 questions, and in the end, you get the score. And the score is quite robust. So if you use that score, you get a good impression if you improve the system or you make your system better. This is an example of user happiness. And this is an Austrian Airlines check-in screen. And this is a check-in screen from Wizz Air. And interesting enough, Austrian Airlines gets quite a few 5-star recommendations, but many 1-star recommendations. Whereas Wizz Air gets many 5-star recommendations and no 1-star recommendations. So again, it's very important if you want to deduct something from your usability test, you have to find out what you really do and how you judge what you found out. I don't know how much time I have left. I have some minutes, I think. Recruit participants. For usability tests, you need the right participants. Never, ever recruit substitutes. You have to define what your user is. And if it's, let's say, a neurosurgeon, an experienced neurosurgeon, you can't use students of computer science to do the test, which is obvious. But very often it's hard to get the right user for a test. Well, these are some examples. I quickly go through that. You can see it on the presentation download. Then there's A/B testing. A/B testing shows that you improve your website. You show it, if you have many users, to show it to some users, and then you decide which group of users did better. So you go on with one of the two possibilities. And Netflix at that time implemented possibility A and dismissed possibility B. So you check the performance of changes. Well, this is not that important. When it comes to usability tests, you often hear from eye tracking. Eye tracking is only useful for very specific tasks. Usually you don't need it. Here it's interesting because if you see a baby's face, everybody looks into the face of the baby. If you see a baby which looks at something, everybody looks where the baby is looking. So if you want to guide by this image people to look to here, you have to make the baby look here. Otherwise, people look into the face of the baby and are happy. This is, I just want to go over that to give you a short impression. From here, from that MP3 sticks to the iPod, There is no way to do that evolution by usability test. I really want to emphasize on that. If you want to use a dictionary, you can't get to Google Translator. And if you do a usability test, you never can never achieve with a dictionary something like Google Translator can do here. Well, this is not perfect in German, but at least I can read what it might mean, which helps. Okay, so usability tests directly generate no solution. Keep that in mind. And you can incrementally make something better, but sometimes you have dismissed the whole idea and you find a new way to implement something, which has to be done in a UX design, which is quite important. Well, and there's something in your design. Of course, you can use design systems which persuade users to do something. Okay, here, high demand. High demand, and people in the end will do something with that because they are tricked into it. Well, I think I have to come to the end. What I really suggest you, if you want to integrate UX into software engineering, you have to do some education of your Scrum teams to integrate UX knowledge into your Scrum teams, which will help you a lot. Well, and I come to the conclusion in the end. We offer, for example, a 3-day training program, which is enough for people to start with UX. And if you really want to know more about UX design and software engineering, the master's program at our university is the best. To implement that, we have about 20 years of experience in that, and our engineers who come out of this master's program, they really know how to do UX. I think I have to stop now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Robert. I can relate actually to a lot of examples you've given. The Windows was very compelling because I was one of the person who was not very happy with the removal of the start button for sure. And as an experienced tester, we often tend to actually just focus on the functional aspect of testing rather than the usability of the testing, the ease of use of those software. And we saw one example in your presentation about the Boeing. So that could be really life-threatening in some cases. So yes. We do have some questions. We do have some interesting questions for you. Should Scrum team learn how to conduct a usability test? What are your views on that?
The simple answer is yes, absolutely, absolutely. What we learned over the last 25 years, to be honest. I come from software engineering for medical doctors. We did laboratory information systems, and we did a lot of work. And the doctor says, "What? We can't. This doesn't work." And so we found out that we had to test the doctors. And the thing is, if you hire a UX expert just for doing the usability test, you are not going to do it because it's too expensive. If you hire experts to help you in the software development process, you will have the same problem. But if you teach your Scrum team what the usability test can do and how this usability test can help you, the Scrum team is able to implement most usability tests by themselves. It's a relatively simple task, relatively straightforward, and as I tried to show in the video, which unfortunately didn't work, Gerhard, who is an employee of IBM in South Africa, by the way, this simple usability test of the website to find a medical doctor in Vienna, this one test takes, with all preparations and everything, it takes, let's say, 1 day. Let's be generous. Let's say it's 1 day of work for one person. But the answer you get is tremendously important. It says, throw it away, rethink everything. So you don't have to implement it that way, and you can get out of the trap. So that's why I'm absolutely a fan that all person in a Scrum team or in a software development team should have basic knowledge of UX, and they should have knowledge of the limitations. Like, I go myself to this and that point, and from here I need an expert or whatever. So yes, Scrum teams should learn how to conduct a usability test, definitely, but only the basics, which can be taught in 3 days.
Sure, fully agree with that. I'm from the automation background, so I do have a question about the automation. So can usability tests be automated? That would be where we mix the manual and the automation part.
Yes, the unmoderated tests can be automated, but I wouldn't do it by myself. If in the case of an automated test, I would, as I showed in the presentation, I would ask usability tests, and you find 10, 20, 30, you name it, companies who are experts on that thing. They provide you with participants. You can provide them with a user group where they can find participants. They guide you through the process to set up the test, and then you get feedback usually within a day or two. So after 2 days, you get valuable insight without actually conducting the test, but just by submitting the material to these companies, and they do the test for you, and the price is I think so cheap that it's not necessary to try to do it yourself. You get less insight though, because you don't have the feedback. You don't see what the individual participant really did. So I wouldn't rely 100% on those automated tests, but I would rely to 50% at least on these tests.
Noted. Thank you for the answer. So we do have a question from our audience as well. Where can I find the website for the training for usability and UX?
The easiest way is to can I write it down here, or can I go back to the presentation?
You can share your screen. I guess we can share your screen again if you want to show the website. Yes.
I write it into the chat.
Okay. So it's UXQCC.com. So
yes,
all the material in terms of training and so on will be available on UXQCC.com. So the syllabus, I guess the syllabus and so on will be there.
Yes, and there is a provider, gask.com, who actually does the exams, and it's a 3 days accreditation program.
Noted. Well, we have some kudos as well. So interesting topic. Thank you for the input. So the audience have been liking. There is a lot of kudos as well on different media. So this brings us to the end of the question. It was a pleasure, Dr. Robert, to have you with us, and I'm sure that the audience have made much enlightenment with the usability, and going forward, that would be a part of the process of the Scrum team as well. So thank you a lot for your presentation, and we'll move forward with the next next speaker in some minutes for QA, empowering QA in agile environment. So that will be the next presentation in some minutes that will be starting. So thank you again, Dr. Robert. It was a pleasure. And stay tuned with us, our audience, so for the next presentation.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
All right, I guess we